All right. There we go. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is your favorite warlock practicing necromancer. And today I'm going to do a book report or a book review on a study of the popular mind crowd psychology by Gustov Le Bon. It's called The Crowd. Okay? And it goes like that. And it looks like this. Now, you can get this book off Amazon. You can probably get it through Books of a Million, your local bookstores or wherever. This morning, I got up and I was checking my email, and many of you know that I have subscribed to many different religious newsletters, if you will. And there was one this morning from the Satanic Temple, which is run by Lucian Graves. Now, keep in mind, I am not attacking the TST. I am just making someone aware that somebody screwed the poochie pooch, if you will, spoke half truth. Now, I will be posting the photos of that email once I get done with this video. Okay, but I wanted to utilize this opportunity as an educational experience and do a book review on this book. It is a very good book, and Gustav Le Bon was born in 1841. That was May 7th. Okay? He died December 13th, 1931. The first publication of The Crowd came out in the 1880s. The 1880s. Now, keep in mind that psychology and parapsychology and even dark psychology has been around for hundreds of years in one form or another. In the medical field, psychology goes back at least 200-300 years. If you go into history, you'll notice in England, they utilize psychology to determine your frame of mind and the level of torment that you would suffer in their mental health facilities, if you will, such as electrocution or electric shock therapy to dipping you in ice water and everything like that. There's a lot of different things that they did, including drugs and narcotics. But from a crowd perspective to a individual perspective, I actually liked this book. And like I said, I'm going to read you the back of it real fast. And first appearing in the 1890s, which is kind of ironic because and it says so right there, by the way, right up the top. Okay, 1990, or the 1890s rather. But yet, if you go to the very first chapter, the preface, it says, and I quote, first published in the 1880s. Wow. Okay. And the last time it was published was in 2018. Gustov Le Bon, circa 1900s. Okay. So, this book here, like I said, I'm going to read you the back. Le Bon's account of The Crowd is an important work of early psychology in life. Le Bon was famous for mastering aspects of several scientific disciplines, forging progress in each. This is true with his investigations on crowd and group psychology, which he compiled in this book. In this treatise, Le Bon identifies a number of common characteristics all crowds possess. The first part, Le Bon examines the mental characteristics of all crowds, whether they possess moral constraints, can adopt ideas or reason out circumstances, or carry a potential of religious undercurrent, is investigated. The second part investigates the various beliefs and sentiments which can develop within a crowd. What opinions a crowd may form about aspects remote to it and close to it are discussed. All are impeccably and comprehensively categorized by Le Bon, who turns to each in detail. The book's final stages classify various different crowds. He discusses types of crowds defined as criminal, such as rioters and looters, before turning to groups such as criminal juries and the crowds present at political rallies and elections. And finally, the behavior of elected officials in crowded assembly rooms is also considered. While partly theoretical, Le Bon's examinations of the crowd as an entity remains valuable in the modern day. He identified the impulsive behavior, irritability, and poverty of reason present in a typical crowd, and characterized these or those within a crowd as being under a type of frenzied hypnosis. That's just right here on the back. Okay? Now, the thing I liked about this book is in part one, he actually breaks it down between an individual thought perspective to that of a herd mentality. And like I said, in one portion of the book, it said this was first published in the 1880s. And that's just in the preface. So, let me read a little bit here. I want you to see what I mean by the preface. The following work is devoted to an account of the characteristics of crowds. The whole of the common characteristics with which heredity endows the individuals of a race constitute a genius of the race. When, however, a certain number of these individuals are gathered together in a crowd for purposes of action, observation proves that from the mere fact of their being assembled, there result certain new psychological characteristics which are added to the racial characteristics and differ from them at times to a very considerable degree. And he goes on from there. Organized crowds have always played an important part in the life of peoples, but this part has never been of such moment as at present. The substitution of the unconscious action of crowds for the conscious activity of individuals is one of the principal characteristics of the present age. And like I said, he goes on from there. But when you go into the introduction, this is another aspect that I wanted to read to you. And I'm going to get into a few other books as well that I want to kind of put out there for you. The evolution of the present age, the great changes in civilization are the consequence of changes in national thought. Modern belief in the power of crowds. It transforms the traditional policy of the European states. How the rise of the popular classes comes about and the manner in which they exercise their power. The necessary consequences of the power of the crowds, unable to play a part other than destructive. The dissolution of worn out civilizations is the work of the crowd. General ignorance of the psychology of crowds. Importance of the study of crowds for legislators and statesmen. And I can go on from there in that. Okay? So now I'm going to go to book 1. The general characteristics of crowds, psychology, law of their mental unity. Okay? What constitutes a crowd from the psychological point of view? A numerically strong agglomeration of individuals does not suffice to form a crowd. Special characteristics of psychological crowds. The turning in a fixed direction of the ideas and sentiments of individuals composing such a crowd, and the disappearance of their personality. The crowd is always dominated by considerations of which it is unconscious. The disappearance of brain activity and the predominance of medullary activity. The lowering of the intelligence and the complete transformation of the sentiments. The transformed sentiments may be better or worse than those of the individuals of which the crowd is composed. A crowd is as easily heretic as criminal. Wow. Amazing, isn't it? The way he breaks it down, separates it, defines it from a logical perspective between an individual versus the crowd mentality. Now, I want you to look at some recent events in history. Black Lives Matter. How about the MAGA movement? How about the LGBTQ? How about the Christian revival after the Charlie Kirk assassination? How about 9/11? You know, it is said that every war creates 3 generations of victims. Drones that rely on the system. I want you to think about that for just a moment. Now, when we get into World War II, the rise of Adolf Hitler, if you go to the book by Jim Marrs, it's called The Rise of the Fourth Reich. In chapter 1, paragraph 2, near the end, it talks about race mysticism. Violent or political mysticism, if you will. Now, this is broken down by class, creed, and recognition of stature. Okay? But it also shows the setting of how fascism works. Now, there is a couple of books on the psychology of fascism. I actually posted a couple of these on my TikTok channel and my Facebook page, my Facebook profile. And it's kind of interesting to see how the movements take place from individual thought to a group collective, where people would do anything that they would not normally do in a crowd if it meant getting away with it. Now, think about how that goes in today's world. You have cameras. You have facial recognition. You got DNA testing. Okay? But then again, you've also got a lot more. The eye in the sky, so to speak. Big Brother is always watching. Unlike back in the day, you could get away with just about anything. But the thing that I found interesting about this book is it talks about the impulsiveness, mobility, and irritability of crowds, which I really enjoyed that. The suggestibility and the credibility of crowds. It goes into the exaggeration and the ingenious. Oh my God, I can't speak this morning, and I do apologize. Of the sentiments of crowds, the indolence, intolerance, and dictatorialness of, and conservatism of crowds, and so forth. The morality of crowds, and there's just so much that goes into this. And by the time you get into book 2, you're dealing with a race, like I said, race mysticism. You got traditions, and I'm going to break these down as well because they're right here in the book on page 45. Okay? So you can see, always back up what you preach with multiple sources and references. So race is defined as the predominating influence it exercises. It represents the suggestions of ancestors. Traditions. They are the synthesis of the soul of the race, social importance of traditions, how after having been necessary, oh my God, like I said, I can't speak today. The necessary, they become harmful. Crowds are the most obstinate maintainers of traditional ideas. Time, it prepares in succession the establishment of beliefs and then their destruction. It is by the aid of this factor that order may proceed from chaos. Political and social institutions like Facebook, TikTok, YouTube. Okay, look at the media in general. The BBC News. Look at your local news. Okay, what is their agenda but to spread fear, to keep you in constant suspense? This is what dopamine is for. Okay, think about that. So, what are political and social institutions? Erroneous ideas of their part, their influence extremely weak. They are effects, not causes. Nations are incapable of choosing what appear to them the best institutions. Institutions are labels which shelter the most dissimilar things under the same title. How institutions may come to be created. Certain institutions theoretically bad, such as centralization, obligatory for certain nations, institutions in education, the deschooling of society. What have we seen over the last 30 to 40 years? I mean, what they teach our children today is a fraction of what you and I learned back in the 70s and 80s. You go back to the 1940s or the 1930s, the 18th century. It's a whole nother freaking class of education that is far more advanced than what we were taught, what our parents were taught. Okay? And it says falsicity of prevalent ideas as to the influence of instruction on crowds, statistical indications, demoralizing effect of Latin systems of education, part instruction might play, examples furnished by various peoples. Amazing right there. This is just the opinions and belief of crowds. The remote factors of the opinions and beliefs of crowds. I mean, page 45 deals with, it breaks down the race, traditions, political, social institutions, time, instruction, and education. I mean, education is the one I enjoyed the most, and that's on page 51. And I mean, he goes into the notes at the very end of this chapter on page 56 and 57. And then when you get into chapter 2, the immediate factors of opinions of crowds, you got another set right here of the psychological factors, such as images, words, and formulae, illusions, experience, and reason. And I'll let you get the book and actually read those. But it is amazing to see how he breaks this down, especially in Europe and America. So I'm going to read the first part of this, which is images, words, and formulae, because I want you to hear this. The magical power of words and formulae, the power of words bound up with the images they evoke, and independent of their real sense. These images vary from age to age and from race to race. The wear and tear of words. Examples of the considerable variations of sense of much used words. The political utility of baptizing old things with new names when the words by which they were designated produced an unfavorable impression on the masses. Variations of the sense of words in consequence of race differences. The different meanings of the word democracy in Europe and America. Okay? Think about that for just a moment. Okay? And when you get into the illusion, their importance, they are to be found at the root of all civilizations. The social necessity of illusions. The crowds always prefer them to truths. Did you ever ask why? Why do you choose to put your head in the sand compared to dealing with the actual topics and trying to actually fix it? Why promise something if you're not going to actually follow through? See what I mean? Illusion. Words change. Experience. Experience alone can fix in the mind of crowds truths become necessary and destroy illusions grown dangerous. Experience is only effective on the condition that it be frequently repeated. The cost of the experiences requisite to persuade crowds. And the reason? The nullity of its influence on crowds. Crowds only to be influenced by their unconscious sentiments. The role of logic in history. The secret causes of improbable events. Okay? And again, he breaks all these down with the notes at the very end, which is on page 66. And then you get into chapter 3, the leaders of crowds and their means of persuasion. The leaders of crowds, the means of actions of the leaders, the prestige. Wow. Amazing. The instinctive need of all beings forming a crowd to obey a leader. The psychology of the leaders of crowds. They alone can endow crowds with faith and organize them. The leaders forcibly dispositic classification of the leaders, the part played by the will. The means of action of the leaders, affirmation, repetition, contagion, the respective part of these different factors, the way in which opinion soon becomes a general opinion. The prestige, definition of prestige is classification of its own different kinds, acquired prestige and personal prestige. Various examples, the way in which prestige is destroyed. Amazing. And again, he goes through the various different examples with the notes on page 79 into page 80. And then you got part 4, fixed beliefs and the changeable opinions of crowds, which I'm not going to get into. Those are two semi-different topics. But like I said, I'd rather have you go out and get this book and read it for yourself. Book 3 is the classification and descriptions of the different kinds of crowds, the sects, the castes, and the classes. You know, the what he refers to as the homogeneous crowds, the termed criminal crowds, and so forth, and criminal juries and all that stuff. The electoral crowds, such as the Senate, the Republicans, and so forth. The paramilitary military assemblies, and so forth. Very, very good book. I highly recommend it. And it goes to show you that just because somebody posts or sends an email from either a political party, a government agency, or just be it a scam, don't take it at face value. Take it with a grain of salt. Like I said, this book here was written around the 1880s, 1890s, because it's got two different dates, or I should say decades, I should say, that it's claimed to be written in. In the front, it says 1880s, but yet on the back, it says 1890s. So that's up to you on which one you want to go with, but here it is. When somebody says that this falsicity goes back to 1906 within crowd mentality, you might want to pay attention and go, if you're saying that it goes back this is half truth. So therefore, what about Gustov Le Bon's work, which goes back to the 18th century? How about the psychological educational theses put forth by medical institutions going as far back as the 17th century in Europe, such as Great Britain? How about Europe, such as France, Germany even? Wow. How about Russia? Wow. Interesting, right? And then when you get into dark psychology, such as, let's go with William Cooper's book on manipulation, you're seeing all those manipulative aspects run by corporations today. Interesting how that is, right? How they pat you on the back and stab you in the back all at the same time. This is why I'm not a part of that system anymore. I retired from that, and I run my own business now. So, but it goes to show you that, like I said, be it no matter what branch of psychology you want to get into, be it individual psychology, be it child psychology, adult psychology, marriage psychology, if you want to get into, like I said, political psychology, crowd mentality, that you can't do anyone better than Gustov Le Bon. Hands down, he really knew his shit. And I can see why he was a master at it and considered the most prominent individual of his field, not just his time and era. So, like I said at the beginning of this video, somebody at the TST really screwed the poochie pooch. Just saying. So, I always try to leave you guys with two pieces of information. The first is the educational. The second is always back up what you preach with numerous, examples, references, and topics, if you will. And always make yourself available to the public because you are responsible for the things that you do and say. Okay? It doesn't matter if you're representing some deity or a spiritual organization, or you're doing it to enlighten and educate the masses. Either way, you got to know your shit, and you got to tell the truth and give these sources to become credible. Okay? So, let's see here. I noticed a few people had posted. D. Rocco 21, welcome to the channel. Yeah, the Antitrust Act, exactly. Ariana Villalobos, C9F, hello. Zeke in God. Pretty sure you mean seeking God, but okay. It's all right. Alrighty. So, with that said, I will be posting the photos of the email that I received this morning from the TST newsletter so that you'll be able to see it. I'm going to try to fit all those. I think there's like maybe 5 of those plus this one. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get all of them in. I may have to post, 2 different aspects of it so that you'll be able to keep an eye out on them. So keep that in mind. You'll be able to read it yourself. So, but for now, that's my book review on The Crowd, a study of the popular mind, crowd psychology by Gustov Le Bon. And it was put forth by Adon Sonia Publishing. Never even heard of that publishing company, but then again, there's several out there that I'm not familiar with, but that doesn't mean they don't exist. So have a good day. I hope it's been an educational video. I hope you learned a lot. And hope you go out and get this book and get it. All right? Have a good day. Good night wherever you are. I want to thank everybody that got on here and interacted. For those of you who are coming on after the fact, thank you for jumping on here. Feel free to hit that notification button, that subscribe button. I understand it helps the algorithm. Not really sure why or how. To me, it's just numbers. But it's more about education for me. So, with that said, have a good day. And until next time, I am out.